Gold mining has always sold the same dream. Big ground, big machines, big risk, and if everything goes right, big gold. But the truth is, out here in the north, the dream is only the bait. What comes after is the part nobody can fake. The sleepless starts, the deadline decisions, the pressure of burning fuel by the hour while the earth gives you nothing back. And sooner or later, every man who steps into this world faces the same brutal question: can you lead when the cost of being wrong keeps climbing? Because there is a difference between being part of a mine and being the one responsible for whether it lives or dies. This time, that question lands on three men standing at the edge of the same unforgiving test. Rick, Parker, Kevin Beats. Three rookie mine bosses. Three first-year shots at running their own operation. Three names carrying very different kinds of pressure into the dirt. Rick, the grinder, the blue-collar heart who built his reputation with sweat and stubbornness. Parker, the mining prodigy, already carrying expectations most men would spend a lifetime trying to earn. And Kevin Beats, born into one of the toughest families in the gold business, now trying to prove that legacy means something only if you can back it up when the call is yours to make. For all three, this is not just about ounces. It is about identity, about leadership, about whether the man standing in the cab, at the controls, or over the cut can make the kind of decisions that turn chaos into gold, and that is what makes this showdown different. This is not just another stretch of ground being torn open in the Klondike. This is the first true rookie mine boss showdown, a collision of potential, pressure, and pride. Out here, no one wins because they want it more. No one survives because their last name is stronger, or their confidence sounds better over the radio. The ground does not reward speeches, it rewards judgment. And when the water lines freeze, when the equipment breaks, when the pay dirt is deeper than expected and the costs start hitting harder than the gold count, judgment becomes everything. That is when a season stops being a plan and becomes a trial. You can feel it before the first bucket even drops. The tension, the quiet comparisons, the unspoken scorekeeping. Every move matters now. Every startup delay matters. Every ounce pulled from the sluice box will mean more than money, because each ounce will say something about the man who pulled it out of the earth. Can Rick rise from worker to leader? Can Parker live up to the weight of being the one everyone expects to dominate? Can Kevin escape the gravity of the Beats name and prove that he belongs here on his own terms? This is the kind of test that doesn't reveal itself all at once. It peels people open slowly, one bad call, one costly mistake, one impossible day at a time. And that is the danger in a competition like this. At the beginning, it looks like a race. By the middle, it feels like survival. By the end, it becomes something far more personal. Because once the season starts fighting back, the real showdown is no longer between three rookie bosses. It is between each man and the version of himself he claimed he would be when the pressure came. Out here, that pressure always comes so the cuts are marked. The machines are lined up. The crews are watching. Three rookie bosses are about to find out that gold mining is not a test of optimism. It is a test of endurance, nerve, and clarity under fire. And before this season is over, one of them will stand taller than the others. But to get there, they will have to survive a kind of first year that can make a reputation, or bury one. And just when it seems like this story is about who can mine the most gold, the real question begins to emerge. Because in the Yukon, the first battle is never against your rival. It is against the ground itself. Long before the first weigh in, each of these men enters the season with a different burden already strapped to his back. Rick does not arrive with the cleanest path or the strongest safety net. He arrives with grit, the kind that makes people root for him, the kind that has to be earned over years of doing the ugly work, the exhausting work, the work nobody remembers once the gold is on the table. Rick knows mining from the bottom up. He knows the mud, the breakdowns, the endless maintenance, the crushing feeling of losing a day to a problem you never saw coming. But knowing how to work inside a mine and knowing how to run one are two very different things. A worker carries effort. A boss carries consequence. That shift changes everything. Now the pressure is not just whether Rick can outwork the problem, it is whether he can outthink it before it spirals. Parker enters from the opposite direction. He does not have to convince people he understands gold. In many ways, that has already been settled. He is young, fast, aggressive, and sharp enough to see inefficiency before most men even notice there is a problem. That is what makes him dangerous. But it is also what makes his challenge more complicated than it looks. Because once you become the favorite, once everyone assumes you should win, success stops feeling like an achievement and starts feeling like a requirement. The margin for error disappears. A decent result becomes a disappointment. A slow week becomes a warning sign. Every decision is measured not against what a rookie should do, but against what Parker should already be capable of. That kind of expectation can sharpen a man. It can also suffocate him. Then there is Kevin Beats. If Rick carries hunger and Parker carries expectation, Kevin carries comparison. In mining country, the Beats name means toughness, control, and a refusal to back down when the ground turns ugly. That reputation can open doors. It can command instant attention. But it can also become a shadow so large that a young boss struggles to stand in the light without being judged against it. Kevin's challenge is not simply to mine well. It is to prove that when the critical call has to be made, when money is on the line and time is bleeding out, he can make that call as his own man, not as a son, not as an extension of family, but as a boss. And that is why this showdown matters more than a normal season ever could. Each man is entering the same brutal landscape, but none of them are fighting the same battle. Rick is fighting to rise. Parker is fighting to justify. Kevin is fighting to separate. All three are learning the same lesson under different forms of pressure. In a first year, there is nowhere to hide. The crew is watching. The fuel bill is watching. The gold count is watching. And above all, the ground is watching. It waits for hesitation. It punishes confidence when confidence turns careless. It magnifies inexperience. A bad cut, a slow wash plant, a delayed move, one wrong read on the pay layer, and suddenly what looked manageable becomes a full-scale crisis. In a place like this, the mine boss is not measured by how he looks standing next to heavy equipment. He is measured by what happens after three things go wrong before noon, by whether he can keep the operation moving when tempers rise, when the weather shifts, when the numbers stop matching the plan. That is the real context behind this showdown. It is not simply about three men chasing gold. It is about three men being forced into a role where instinct, leadership, and emotional control have to mature at the speed of disaster. The Yukon does not care where they came from. It does not care who has the better story, the better name, or the louder confidence. It only cares whether they can pull order from disorder faster than the season can consume them. And now, with the background set and the pressure beginning to close in, the next chapter becomes the one every mine boss fears most. Because once the season starts, the excuses disappear, and that is when the real damage begins. What looks like a challenge on paper is about to become a chain reaction in the field, and the first crack won't come from the competition. It will come from the simple, brutal reality that mining never stays under control for long. At the start of any mining season, optimism is cheap. The cuts are still clean. The machines still look ready. The plan still feels solid enough to believe in. But a mine has a way of stripping confidence down to its frame. One delay leads to another. A small breakdown turns into a lost day. A lost day becomes a lost week. The fuel keeps burning. Payroll keeps coming. The clock keeps moving. And very quickly, what began as a season of possibility turns into a season of pressure. That is where the rookie mine boss showdown truly comes alive. Not in the ambition, in the consequences. For Rick, the rising tension is written all over the gamble he has made on himself. He is not standing on comfort. He is standing on faith. Faith that hard work can carry him farther than doubt. Faith that instinct can fill the gaps that experience usually covers. But the mind does not care how badly a man wants the breakthrough. If the operation stumbles, Rick feels it from every side. The crew needs direction. The plant needs feeding. The cut needs opening. The numbers need improving. And underneath all of it is the silent fear every first-year boss knows too well. What if this is bigger than I thought it was? What if wanting the job and being ready for it are not the same thing? Those questions are easy to bury when the gold is coming in. They get a lot louder when it isn't. Parker's pressure takes a different form. His danger is not self-belief collapsing. His danger is expectation becoming a trap. He understands the system. He understands production. He understands that in a business this expensive, there is no room for drift. But that knowledge can harden into impatience. When Parker sees the gap between what should be happening and what is happening, frustration becomes part of the operation. And frustration is expensive. It can push a boss to force the issue too early, move too fast, demand too much, or grind his crew against a schedule that no longer matches the reality in the ground. For a young leader, that is the razor's edge. Talent creates momentum. Pressure tests whether that momentum has control. Kevin's tension is quieter, but no less dangerous. Every move he makes sits beside a comparison he never asked for but cannot avoid. If something works, some will say that was expected. If something fails, some will say the name did not save him. That kind of pressure can lead a rookie boss into the most dangerous instinct in mining, trying to prove too much, too fast. Mining punishes ego. It punishes rush decisions, aggressive moves unsupported by conditions, and stubbornness disguised as confidence. Kevin is not just trying to succeed. He is trying to establish authority in a world where authority has to be visible, immediate, and impossible to question. That takes more than toughness. It takes timing. Then the season tightens. Mechanical issues start cutting into momentum. Wash plants become hungry beasts, always needing more dirt, more water, more uptime, more labor. Ground conditions refuse to cooperate. Pay layers shift. Strip ratios change. Recovery does not always match the promise buried in the cut. And the worst part is this: mining doesn't fail all at once. It bleeds you. An hour here, a half day there, an expensive fix, a week cleanup, a tense conversation at the end of a long shift when nobody wants to say out loud what everyone is thinking. Are we behind? Are we chasing? Are we burning too much just to stay in the game? That is when the role of boss becomes painfully real. A boss cannot disappear into the work. He cannot just bury himself in effort and hope the season turns around. He has to make the next call. Open new ground or stay put. Push the crew harder or preserve morale. Take the risk or protect what little stability is left. Every decision costs something, and every wrong decision compounds. That is the pressure cooker these three rookie bosses are now standing inside. Different personalities, different histories, same brutal truth. The season will not slow down just because they need time to figure it out. And as the setbacks stack up, something begins to shift. The showdown starts separating into layers. On the surface, it is still Rick versus Parker versus Kevin, but underneath, it becomes something darker and more revealing. Rick versus doubt, Parker versus control, Kevin versus legacy. Each man is fighting two battles now. One in the mine and one in himself. The machines can be repaired. The cuts can be widened. The water can be redirected. But once a boss loses clarity, once frustration clouds judgment or fear creeps into the decision-making, the whole operation starts to wobble. That is why the middle of a mining season is often where reputations are truly made. Not when everything is running, when it isn't, when the crew is tired, when the weather turns, when the radios carry more problems than solutions, when the cleanup at the end of the week feels lighter than it should, and the gold in the pan suddenly looks more like a warning than a reward. This is the stretch where first-year mine bosses either begin to grow into the job, or the job begins to swallow them. And just when each man seems close to finding his rhythm, the showdown takes its hardest turn yet. Because the next phase is not about enduring pressure, it is about answering it. And somebody is about to make the kind of decision that changes everything. There comes a point in every hard season when the noise falls away and the truth stands bare. No more easy optimism, no more hiding behind potential, no more explaining why there is still time. That is the turning point. The place where a mine boss stops being judged for effort and starts being judged for command. And in this rookie showdown, that moment does not arrive gently. It hits like the North always does, fast, cold, and expensive. For Rick, the turning point feels deeply personal. He has already fought through uncertainty, setbacks, and the exhausting grind of trying to prove that he belongs on the same field as men with stronger reputations. But now the season demands something more difficult than effort. It demands conviction, not the loud kind, not the kind made for cameras or crew speeches, the quiet kind, the kind that lets a man make the right call, and when he knows that if it fails, the failure will land squarely on his shoulders. This is where Rick begins to change. He stops carrying himself like a guy trying to survive the opportunity and starts carrying himself like someone willing to own it. That shift matters, because when a boss stops reacting and starts commanding, the whole operation feels it. Parker's turning point is more subtle, but in some ways more dangerous. He has the intelligence, the aggression, the mining instincts. Those were never the question. The question is whether he can temper them when the season stops behaving like a system and starts behaving like a crisis. Great young operators often believe they can outwork the problem, outpush the delay, outsmart the ground. Sometimes they can, but real leadership comes when a boss understands that raw force is not always control. Sometimes the smartest move is restraint. Sometimes the boldest move is to pivot. For Parker, the turning point is not whether he can push harder. It is whether he can see the season clearly enough to know when harder is not better. That kind of judgment is what separates a gifted miner from a lasting boss. Kevin's turning point carries the weight of inheritance, but what defines it is independence. The season eventually corners every rookie boss into a decision that no mentor, no family name, and no reputation can make for him. Kevin reaches that line, and when he does, the question becomes brutally simple. Can he trust his own judgment when the stakes are real? Can he make the tough call not because it is expected, but because it is right? This is the test that strips away lineage and leaves only leadership behind. In that moment, Kevin is not representing a family, he is representing himself. And in mining, there is nothing more exposing than that dot. As the gold totals tighten and the showdown sharpens, every ounce takes on new meaning. Gold is no longer just the result. It is evidence. Evidence that the strategy worked. Evidence that the risk paid off. Evidence that the boss in charge made enough right calls to keep the operation alive long enough to matter. By now, nobody is mining casually. Every cleanup feels like Judgment Day. Every number carries emotional weight. A good total buys relief, but only briefly. A weak total does more than hurt the scoreboard. It shakes confidence. It changes the energy on the claim. It forces conversations no rookie boss wants to have. And this is where the showdown reveals its deepest truth. The ground does not care about narrative. It does not care who has the better arc, the more sympathetic struggle, or the more famous name. It only responds to execution. That is what makes the peak so powerful. By the time these three men arrive here, they are no longer the same people who started the season. Rick has been hardened by responsibility. Parker has been tested by expectation. Kevin has been forced into self-definition. Each one has lost something along the way: comfort, certainty, innocence, maybe even the illusion that this job can ever be controlled. But each one has gained something too: a clearer instinct, a tougher skin, a deeper understanding of what being boss really costs. Now the showdown is no longer theoretical. The ending is visible. One rookie will emerge with the strongest claim to the title of top first-year mine boss. But in the final stretch, the gold count alone does not tell the full story, because the real climax is not just who produces, it is who becomes undeniable. The man whose decisions hold, the man whose operation survives the pressure, the man who looks at a season trying to break him and refuses to blink first. And with the final verdict looming, only one question remains. When the dust settles and the numbers are counted, who will this season say they really were? In the end, that is what mining does better than almost anything else. It reveals people, not in speeches, not in ambition, not in how they picture themselves before the season starts. It reveals them in the hard math of consequence, in what they do when the plane cracks, in whether they can absorb pressure without passing panic down the line, in whether they can keep their crew moving, their decisions clean, and their nerve intact while the cost of every mistake keeps rising. The Rookie Mind Boss Showdown may begin as a contest between Rick, Parker, and Kevin Beats, but by the finish, it becomes something far more permanent than a competition. It becomes a record of who each man was when tested for real. Rick's season carries the force of transformation. He represents the part of gold mining people still want to believe in: the climb, the chance, the gritty underdog who refuses to stay small just because the job is bigger than he expected. But what gives his journey weight is not that he wanted it. It is that he had to grow into it under fire. He had to learn that heart can start the engine, but only discipline and judgment keep the mind alive. Parker's story is different, and that difference matters. He does not symbolize potential in the same way. He symbolizes pressure, the kind that arrives early and never really leaves. His challenge was never simply to mine gold. It was to prove that being good is not the same as being complete, and that true leadership requires a level of balance even the most gifted young boss has to earn. Kevin's story may be the most quietly compelling of all, because his season is about separation, about stepping into the brutal light of responsibility and finding out whether there is a self strong enough to stand there without the shelter of legacy. And if there is one thing this showdown proves, it is that first-year success is never simple. It is messy, expensive, emotional. Every cleanup is tied to sacrifice no camera can fully capture. Every ounce has a backstory of frustration, risk, repair, adaptation, and doubt. That is why the title of Top Rookie Boss matters, not because it flatters the winner, but because it acknowledges the reality of what he had to survive to get there. In a business where a bad week can erase a month of progress, surviving a first year with your operation, your crew, and your credibility intact is an achievement measured in more than gold. By now, the scoreboard may tell us who came out on top. The weigh-ins may settle the rivalry. The counts may finally separate first from second and second from third. But what lingers after the totals are read is something else. It is the image of three men walking into a season with different burdens and walking out of it changed, harder, sharper, more honest. No longer just promising names in mining country, but men who have already felt the cost of command. Men who now understand that leadership in the Klondike is not about standing above the operation. It is about standing inside the storm and still making the next call. That is why this showdown leaves a mark, because it captures the exact moment when possibility collides with proof, when inexperience meets consequence, when ambition stops being a story and starts becoming a result. For one man, the season ends in victory. For the others, it ends in lessons paid for the hard way. But none of them leave empty-handed. Whether they won the title or not, they leave with the one thing every real mind boss needs before he can ever become dangerous in this business. They know now what the Joe basks of a man. And in the North, that knowledge is worth more than pride, because gold can make you rich, but pressure is what makes you real.